Hi there, this is Matt with State of Flux, here with a review for Star Trek Insurrection. This is going to be my penultimate review of the Star Trek films before deep diving into Star Trek Nemesis next week. Now, Star Trek Insurrection is a really interesting film in that it's sort of lumped in with the bad installments of the Star Trek movies, and I certainly don't agree with that. I do not think Star Trek Insurrection is a bad movie. But it has this weird thing where it is the most forgettable Star Trek movie. And I can't put a finger on why that is. Every time I'm watching the movie, I am fully engaged, pardon the pun, and I am so invested in what's happening, and I keep thinking to myself, why is this movie lumped in with the bad ones? I don't get it. While I'm watching it, I am more invested in this than even some of the ones that I like better than this, like the movie that comes directly before Star Trek First Contact, which I love. It's a great movie. But this just feels so authentically Star Trek The Next Generation, more so than any of the other brethren of the Next Gen movies. But it's like the moment the movie concludes, the moment I step away from it, it just vanishes. It's gone. And it's so hard to ruminate on or reflect on because it has nothing that sticks with you. And I have no idea as to why that is. So I'm shooting this video one day after watching the movie again, and I had to look up some stuff because I couldn't remember certain aspects of the film, which is weird. And it's only this installment of the entire 13-film franchise that I have this problem with. So, let's discuss Star Trek Insurrection, shall we? This feels like a lost episode of the show, almost. Unlike the other three Star Trek Next Gen movies, which have a scope that is grand, that is huge, huger than anything that ever happened on that show, this film doesn't. Its scope is very televisual. It is something that it feels like this was just a two-part episode that they had developed for one of the three shows that they were juggling at the time, and decided, well, let's commit this to a feature, because it is saying something kind of interesting until the conclusion makes it fall apart. At the time, there was a lot of news going on about plastic surgery, certainly within Hollywood. All these name stars were getting facelifts and stuff like that. And you have a villain in this film that is obsessed with youth. And all the aliens have an exceptional makeup. Like, F. Murray Abraham is almost unrecognizable. He has such authentically realistic looking makeup that mimics like a facelift. Their face is literally being pulled to the back of their head to maintain some semblance of youth. And the Enterprise crew find themselves on this planet that is essentially a planet of the Fountain of Youth. It gives them sort of like this magical imbuement that provides them youth or stops their aging wherever they're at. And that is something that I really like. This feels very much like a Next Gen episode, or could have been a Voyager episode. That's the feel that this provides, and I like that. That's one of the best aspects of this film. But truly the best aspect of this film is, I think this is the movie of the four Next Gen films that gets the characters the most honestly. I like how Picard is portrayed in this, how he goes to fight for what he feels is right, even if it's in the face of what the Enterprise, or not the Enterprise, Starfleet is saying. The Federation's regulations are going against him, and he's standing up for what he feels the true regulations always are and should have been. I really like what they do with Riker, making him more youthful like he was in the earlier parts of the show, and getting him together with Troi. I love their storyline in this film. It's great. Jonathan Frakes directed this film, and he did so like a strong job of it. And I like what he did, where he gave every one of the characters kind of a moment to shine. Shy of poor Gates McFadden, who's just completely forgotten. One of the most beautiful moments in this film, though, is when the Fountain of Youth and the restorative properties of this planet restore Geordi's vision. His vision heals itself, which I don't think is true to his explanation of being blind within the show, but it makes for a great moment where he recognizes this isn't going to last, but since he has this newfound ability, he just really wants to immerse himself in it for one moment, and he watches a beautiful sunrise and shares a moment with Picard. It's things like that in this film that really resonate well. As I say, I really like the budding romance or rekindled romance of Riker and Troi. I like what they do with Worf. Data has some stuff going on, I guess. The best aspects of this film regarding Data aren't so much the strange introduction to his character in the film. It's more how he interacts with the young boy on the planet. And the planet is inhabited by these peaceful people who are essentially stand-ins for the Amish, or an Amish-like community. And I like that aspect. These are people who understand technology, who are capable to use technology, but are willfully letting themselves not be governed by technology and living in a way that they feel more comfortable with, even if it is archaic by the Federation standards. I thought that aspect of the film is really interesting and compelling, and I really like the actors who are inhabiting that planet. The film kind of falls apart towards the end, where you discover that this race of beings who are so obsessed with youth were once the people of that planet who chose to leave and embrace technology. I get what they're kind of going for, but I think it would have been a much stronger thing if you had like people who were obsessed with youth rather than people who rejected their youth and are now wishing they hadn't. That's kind of just the same thing as the facelift, right? If you're catching my meaning. I hope I'm explaining that well enough. I think the idea of the alien, an alien being who is obsessed with youth, wanting to go onto this planet that might revitalize who they were when they were youthful, that makes more sense to me than people who had that, rejected it, and are going back. It's just another interpretation of what a facelift is. And I think that's where the film falls apart a little bit in its conclusion. I think that's a better explanation of what I was trying to say. If not, I just said the same thing twice and you're like, dude, move on. Like a lot of these Star Trek, particularly next-gen films, it kind of falls apart in the final 15 minutes where they have to make an action battle. And the only reason this one really falls apart is they're in like this big tube thing where there's like blue screen all behind them. And it looks to me like it was blue screen just put all around them. They were going to fill it in. Budgetary constraints had them not fill that in. And so they just were like, well, the bright blue is kind of an interesting evocative image. Let's just commit to that. It looks bad and it looks unfinished. And this is the first Star Trek movie, I believe, where they went full CG for all the ships and stuff like that. I think there's like 1 or 2 model shots, but previous to this, all other Star Trek films did either a combination of digital and model work, or exclusively model work in the previous one, some of the previous ones, the older ones. This one almost exclusively went CG, and the marrying of CG with like moving ship with the interstellar space surrounding them doesn't quite look amazing quite yet. The compositing just wasn't quite there, making me firmer in my stance that this might have worked better as a TV movie, or like a 2-part episode of the show, but I digress. I'm not one to really harp on like poor visuals. My thing is just it's more noticeable because you came off of 2 really kind of excellent looking Star Trek films where the ship looks really good composited against the outer space. Here, the stuff they did with outer space, making them in the nebula, the sort of purplish, pinkish, reddish like aura around the space, is really visually interesting. It's when the Enterprise is married to that it looks a little less good. However, it's 1998. They did what they could, and they didn't do a bad job. It's just surrounded by this one and like Nemesis, they'd kind of fixed that a little bit. It just looks kind of less good than the other ones. But I like this movie, and I'm going to give it a good review, because when you watch it, you do enjoy it. It has a interesting idea for a villain, it has a strong performance by F. Murray Abraham, it has the best use of characters for the next-gen films, shy of poor Beverly Crusher, who has just nothing to do. How did they not figure out something for her to do in these movies? It's so sad. This is the 3rd one, and she's had, like, what, maybe 14 lines between the 3 films? Come on. And if memory serves, it does not get better with Nemesis. But regardless. And I like Jonathan Frakes' direction. He is able to extrapolate strong performances and find those character moments that you can like just let simmer for a moment, unlike some of the other Star Trek Next Gen directors. So anyway, I like this film. I'm going to give it a strong 3 stars. While I watch it, I give it much more than 3 stars, and after the fact, I forget about it, so it would probably fall under the 3-star rating, but I'm going to give it a very firm 3 stars. I like this movie. Let me know what you think, and do you have the same problem that I have with this movie? I'm very curious about that. Thanks for watching, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and next week we will have for you the final Star Trek film that of the original set that I'm going to be reviewing, and that is Star Trek Nemesis.